I still say B-movie is a terrible movie.
It's not that bad.
There's only 5 good jokes in the whole thing.
You know, I had a thought.
What?
We're both nerds, right? But we haven't done anything particularly nerdy yet.
If this is an episode of Big Bang Theory, I will burn your apartment down.
No, I don't like watching Nerd Blackface the show. Star Trek!
Star Trek!
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission: to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
Everyone loves Star Trek. I mean, well, I guess not everyone. I mean, there are still some fan bases that don't. Star Trek is good. If you don't like Star Trek, you should. Good show. Good movies. Well,
That's a moral gray area.
okay. Some of the movies are good. Some of the movies are not so good. But this first movie, the movie that is called Star Trek: The Motion Picture, is
This is a noticeably flawed production. So, Star Trek the original series came out between 69 and 72. It gained a cult following during the years after because of the numerous reruns on TV.
The effects and model work had largely been known as being quite groundbreaking for the time period that it came out in.
But nowadays, they look hysterically bad.
And incredibly dated. But
Because there was such a cult following, people began wondering if there was going to be a motion picture, and Gene Roddenberry pushed for there to be a motion picture or another series as well.
And as a result, the plan to have a motion picture was in development for quite a long time. Pretty much throughout the early 70s.
It's one of those projects that went into production hell and didn't seem to find the light of day for a very long time. In fact, the only reason that the movie was eventually made is because 3 weeks before Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Star Wars made science fiction a big thing, they had actually canned the project and were saying, we're going to make a new Star Trek series. Then Star Wars happened.
So, all you Star Trek fans, you Trekkies out there, you have Star Wars to thank for this.
Star Wars says you're welcome. But because Star Wars was such a huge hit, Paramount finally said, you know what, we're going to give you back the movie project.
And everyone from the original cast came back except for one person. Leonard Nimoy.
Why was I not invited to be in the new Star Trek motion picture?
Captain, it is logical to assume that you suck.
But I am the reason they come to see Star Trek. Everybody loves the Shatner.
Everybody except everyone you've worked with.
And I make every production more profitable.
Star Trek 5.
But we both mutually agreed to never speak about Star Trek 5. Again.
Allergies. Star Trek, the motion picture, has sometimes been known as Star Trek, the slow motion picture.
At a running time of 2 hours and 12 minutes, it definitely drags in places, but it's not necessarily without reason.
Well, if you look at the history of sci-fi filmmaking, what did they have to go on? The highest grossing sci-fi movie at the time, and the most critically successful, was 2001: A Space Odyssey. So, that follows that, what would you do? What did 2001: A Space Odyssey do that this movie is going to try to replicate?
Long model shots.
Groundbreaking effects at slow paces that make you feel like you're on drugs.
So there's a big thing in space.
Why is any object we don't understand always called a thing?
That makes everything electric around it disappear.
In addition to that, the Starship Enterprise is the only ship in range.
Because plot. Therefore, Captain Kirk takes over command of the Enterprise.
From Captain Decker. I mean, Commander Decker, who's demoted.
Because Kirk is taking over the Enterprise because he's the Admiral and he wants to personally oversee taking care of electric thing number 347.
Because he knows the Enterprise better than Decker. Wait a second.
Admiral, this is an almost totally new Enterprise. You don't know her a tenth as well as I do.
That's why you're staying aboard.
This is actually one of the biggest things that the budget went into. I know my way around the Enterprise better than anyone in Starfleet. Oh, I forgot. How could I forget that we put so much money into making the Enterprise look good in the redesign? And now that there is a redesign, I don't know where anything is.
Captain Kirk, A, does not know the ship, B, does not know the anomaly, C, does not know how anything works, but D decides to be a and do things anyway.
Because Kirk.
I feel like Kirk is playing William Shatner, then William Shatner is playing Kirk.
Could be.
And just to highlight how competent Kirk is at manning the Enterprise, we get one of our first scenes of Kirk doing something.
Zahn, could you step in the teleporter, please? Don't worry, it hasn't been tested yet.
But I'm sure you'll be fine. I mean, what's the worst that can...
Malfunction. Malfunction.
Give it me.
Malfunction.
Starfleet, boost your mat again. We need more signal. More signal!
They're losing their pattern.
Oh no, they're forming.
Oh, that's a bit grim. Lovely scene of Kirk killing off Zahn, which I assume he did because he knew Spock would show up anyway, because I don't think the film would be funded if Spock wasn't there.
Spock starts off on Vulcan, trying to go through an ancient ritual. He fails, and so eventually rejoins the crew of the Enterprise. And then no plot happens for about, 40 minutes.
And then finally Spock comes on board. Oh yeah, we also get, like, forever looking at the model of the Enterprise, which is a pretty cool model design. I like it. I like seeing it. It's clean, it's crisp, it's beautiful, looks much better than the original series, which kind of looks like a model from Plan 9 from Outer Space. This looks good. It looks really, really good.
And the detail work is spectacular. But
It does carry on a hair too long.
or maybe several hairs too long. Or maybe a wig too long.
It carries on a wig too long.
Yeah, it carries on a wig too long.
If you cut all of the very, very long, drawn-out scenes from the story, I feel like it'd be the length of an episode.
Also, before we leave, we need to get Dr. McCoy on here.
And to make sure the film is not dated at all, we're going to give him an impressively appropriate outfit design. Yeah, that doesn't scream 70s at all.
It's Disco McCoy, everybody!
Sure. Why did you make me your chief medical officer again? I was in the disco party having so much fun. The dialogue in this, sometimes good, but sometimes a little weird. Because in those long drawn out shots, some of the dialogue you have is just, Spock, technobabble. Captain, look. Or this. Or this. Or this. Oh wait, I'm sorry, that's the audience. We are looking at some dialogue that isn't always the best. When it tries to give us some good, riveting, dramatic dialogue, it always carries through. And I'm very impressed, especially when it's trying to compare V'ger to a child.
This child is about to wipe out every living thing on Earth. Now, what do you suggest we do? Spank it.
By the way, the monster techno thing is V'ger. I will not spoil the reveal for you because it is actually very thought-provoking. The intellectual medium in which they try to convey the emotion of something that they can't understand, it's quite brilliant.
The soundtrack, which is by Jerry Goldsmith, who does an amazing job of bringing the theme of Star Trek into a full, glorious orchestra sound.
I think he inspired Hans Zimmer with this amazing sound right here.
Why is there an Inception boom in my Star Trek?
I think some of the biggest faults that it may have is its long, long shots, trying to be 2001: A Space Odyssey mixed with a little bit of Star Wars. On the plus side is that they're able to be engaging without much action, these amazing distance shots, and these great looks, these great effects that really, really show the scale of all of it.
Yeah.
And a soundtrack that builds ambience pretty well.
As a motion picture, it's trying to take the concepts that the original series was known for and then put them into a size and scale far beyond that which the original series could produce. It really wants to capture, in a way, the epic grandness and scale of space. And we're so small in comparison to it. And it uses V'ger and the boom sound to kind of represent that idea.
The set pieces and matte paintings are very good and very intelligent in their design.
The most impressive thing, I think, is the fact that there's clearly design direction going into this.
The ending of the movie actually was almost scrapped, but there was a NASA scientist that said it was possible to have a world of living machines.
Some of them are called Decepticons. They were dismantled, and then given to some guy called Michael Bay.
This is Optimus Prime. You will face the age of extinction. Is my poor attempt at an Optimus Prime voice. In Star Trek, there is a certain motif, something I like to call the 3 Bs.
Bang, bribe, bluff. Let's see which one Captain Kirk picks to get V'ger to stop attacking the Earth. Bluff! Oh, I thought he was going to go with bang.
He usually goes with bang.
My oath of celibacy is on record, Captain.
Apparently somebody actually remembers that Captain Kirk has a very, very long history of womanizing.
Actually, that makes sense. Never mind. I take that back. The scene's not awkward. It's just weird.
As much as I would love to say more about Captain Decker...
Commander Decker?
Or Commander Decker...
Yes, our exec and science officer.
Captain Kirk has the utmost confidence in me.
They give too much screen time to Kirk, not enough screen time to Decker.
But really, in the end, what this movie was about was reintroducing these characters to the world in full cinematic epic scale. And in that sense, the movie works really well. So, ratings time! The story we give a 69.5 out of 100. It drags on a bit more. A lot of the new stuff that's put in is throwaways. This is a story that was already told in an episode of the original series. But, in defense of it, it's not an origin story. I respect the writers of Star Trek for assuming an intelligent audience that can understand subtlety. They don't origin story everything out for you, unlike JJ. And the difference between this and a normal episode of the series is the scale of it.
With the characters, I feel like that was one of the weakest elements of the film. 55.5 out of 100. The characters aren't bad. They are not developed enough, especially in the case of Decker and Ilea, and they didn't change as a result of the film.
Captain.
They were just there, experiencing this, moving on, never referencing it again. Now, if there was some change, or we focused a lot more on the 2 characters we're supposed to have the most connection to, that being Decker and Ilea, or we had more turmoil with the crew involving the characters, it would have been a far, far, far better movie. But as it stands, the most we feel comfortable giving it is a 55.5 out of 100.
And that's not to say that the original series characters are bad, it's just they're not taken full advantage of here, unlike some of the other films later on in the series. The sound and music we give 83 out of 100. Yes, the Inception boom can get a bit irksome at times.
Oh, you mean the...
Ah! Yes, they do use that a lot. But in its defense, it's a way of them representing V'ger, something so alien and vast and simple in a lot of ways that there's no words that can describe it, but that sound works throughout the film to give you a sense of what V'ger is. And the Jerry Goldsmith music, even though most of it is just a full orchestra version of the theme, he uses full advantage of it, and he uses full advantage of simpler tones in order to give you the vast and empty feeling of space, and also strangely vast but limited intelligence of V'ger. So, I believe the sound and music deserves 83 out of 100. I can't put it any higher because well,
It's not that memorable.
most of it is just an orchestrated version of the theme or the boom sound.
Now I'm going to talk about the real star of the show. It's not William Shatner.
It's not Leonard Nimoy.
It's the effects!
Ah!
The effects are amazing, especially for the time period they were done in. We're looking at the 1970s, a period of model work, very limited CGI. But this looks amazing.
Every single shot of the Enterprise looks like a real ship. Even when it's put through V'ger, when we go through the portal, everything looks really good and makes sense.
There's a reason the scenes drag on so long, and that is because the effects are so good, the effects are so groundbreaking. You can believe you're there. You can feel the ambience, you can feel the size, the weight, and the scope. The effects are fantastic. Therefore, we give it a 92 out of 100.
Some of them are beginning to look dated. There's a couple of bad green screen effects, a couple of stand-ins that are obviously stand-ins, but for the most part, and given the time period, these effects look really good, and we're giving it a high score for that reason.
And
yes,
honestly, some of the effects still hold up.
the model work still looks amazing, just as good as Star Wars, if not better in some ways. Now we get to the overall score. The overall score, we had to give it, was 60 out of 100. And this is mainly because of the pacing issues. The film could have been only an hour and a half, and it's 40 minutes longer than that. Therefore, we're just going to take 40 points off of its overall score just for that reason. The ambience it creates with the long shots is really good, but they could have done it a little faster.
It's downright Kubrick-ian. But the thing is that they're not Stanley Kubrick, they don't have that style down. And it does drag. It drags its feet. I remember watching it with you, we were able to have full conversations in between the shots while they attempt to get them to the next plot point, you know?
Yeah, there is literally a 10-minute sequence of them going over V'ger and just staring at it, and we had an entire conversation during that time. Mainly about how oddly shaped the end of V'ger is.
That's all we're going to say about that.
You dirty, dirty-minded pervert.
You are going to hell.
Given the time period that it came out, it was really amazing. And since we have this to thank for Star Trek being brought back for all of the later movies and for the birth of Next Generation, we have to give it at least 60. But we can't give it more than that because it's just not a well-paced film. It has a lot of problems.
It is the slow motion picture. The average score of all of this put together in a nice, neat little bundle, we come out at a stunning 72 out of 100. To be honest, it's not as bad as everyone thinks it is.
Let's look at the Rotten Tomatoes. I'm sure there's, oh my goodness!
47%.
It's not that bad. Oh, come on, I'm sure the audience was able to forget. Oh my goodness, it's even worse.
42% on the audience's ratings.
There is a lot of hatred of this film because, well, it's trying to be 2001 but isn't, and Star Wars had just come out a few years earlier, so it's slower than Star Wars. Its model work is very amazing, its design work is on point, but
its directing style isn't Kubrick, so therefore a lot of people are confused as to what its identity is, and so have probably rated it pretty low. But if you look at it by itself, without any of the cultural implications or the background behind it, you can find it within your heart to give it a pretty decent rating. Like, I'm glad I watched it, probably won't see it very often, but it's okay. We'll recommend that you rent this rather than buy it and rather than skipping it, because it's pretty good.
We recommend renting it because it's worth watching once just as a time capsule of how Star Trek was resurrected and brought back.
Keep the fast forward button handy. Looking at the shots actually in fast motion is far better than looking at it in the slow motion. You just don't get the good Jerry Goldsmith score.
And you don't get the ambience. I think the movie tried too hard to create super ambience and just overplayed its hand a little bit.
And that's okay. Movies make mistakes.
Yeah. But since we have this to thank for all of Star Trek after it, it's at least worth renting, and it's at least worth 70, 72.
Yeah, definitely. So, give it a watch, let us know what you think in the comments, and we're out.
I'm Pragmus Omega.
I'm Pragmus Alpha.